You know what I mean? It's like they'll put up with so much and then they'd had enough, and this was it. My job at the paint store was beginning to be a real drag. I didn't mind working hard at some things. Burglaries weren't always easy, but having to show up 4 days a week, sometimes before 10 a.m., was a real pain in the ass. I got cranky, sort of a male version of PMS, so as I was finishing up my Friday shift, I took a razor blade and started doodling. I didn't cut deep, not stitch-worthy at least, but I did cut deep enough to get the blood flowing. It was just lines at first, and then a small swastika, and then a 2-word message. "Excuse me, do you work here?" I looked up and smiled. I was sitting behind the paint desk wearing a navy blue smock with the name of the paint store boldly displayed on the chest, but yeah, I might have looked like I was a customer. "Yes," big smile, "how may I help you?" She was your standard getting paint for her husband's weekend off housewife. She picked the colors, he laid it on. "I was looking for a white, maybe a Navajo or a Swiss coffee." "That sounds great. We have the Navajo pre-made, but if you'd like, I could mix you up a special batch." And I don't know if you know who Ted Bundy is. Anyway, I'm one of those guys. I'm sorry, and no offense to anybody that might have suffered under his hands, but what I'm saying, I just look like a nice guy. You know what I mean? I'm 50 now, but I look nicer when I was younger, and it's like people always wanted to cut me slack. Like even the police, I could be standing in front of a fire with a can of gas and a lighter in my hands, and the cops would roll up. I go, "I just found these," and they go, "Thank you, son." Anyway, so I look nice, and this lady wants to get some paint, right? So anyway, so that sounds great. We have the Navajo pre-made, but if you like, I could mix you up a special batch. I couldn't have been nicer or more ready to serve, but I was a fresh shit dipped in Godiva chocolate, and she was about to break through that thin candy shell. I don't like special orders, no offense, but they never seem to match, and I don't want to be a bother. Wasn't she nice? I bet she even made sandwiches and served cold drinks while her husband painted. I understand there's nothing like the consistency of a large batch of paint coming straight from the factory. You always know what you're getting when you grab it off the shelf. I walked her down the paint aisle, even grabbing a cart for her. I was eager and didn't want her to struggle with her 2 gallons of the White Indian. She was walking behind me, and when we got to her brand, I stopped, did a half twirl, so I was now facing her. My move might have been a bit too Fred Astaire, but she seemed delighted, even thrilled with her shopping experience. I reached out with my left arm, my sleeve rolled up. A pro, not really needing to see what I was grabbing. I looked her straight in the eyes, she blushed, and looked away to her right, where she froze in disgust. On my forearm, blatantly displayed at eye level, sleeve rolled back like a movie curtain, was the 2-word message. The blood had smeared a bit and congealed in a few spots, but it was still very, very legible. It read, "Fuck customers." Yeah, she was bummed. Anyway, and I wasn't digging deep with a razor blade. You know what I mean? You just cut a little bit. You know what I'm saying? When you just cut it a little bit. Like, it's just kids fucking around on their arms. But she didn't like it. Anyway, so I lost my job. That was the end. It was like, hey, you gotta go, man. Fuck customers written on my arm didn't go well. So, anyway, and then, like, a lot where we grew up, like, I grew up in the suburbs, and I don't know, like a lot of people from the city, like, punk rock was looked at differently where I grew up versus, like, people in the city. Like, people in the city, they're kind of, like, all forced into each other, and you got some weirdness going on. You know what I'm saying? It's like I used to joke to people, I never even knew what a tranny was until I was making out with one. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, what's that? So, but, where I grew up, it's like everybody, every fucking house is the same, everybody looks the same. The only guys around where I was, there was one guy on gay guy on Glee Club. You know what I mean? I grew up with busing, I grew up with all that shit. I lived in a fucking white suburban neighborhood, man, and so in the city, when you look a little fucked up, it slides. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people wandering down the street fucked up, and everybody's kind of tripping. But if you take somebody a little bent and stick them in the suburbs, man, it's like you can smell them 15 miles away. It's like, what the fuck? They got the police after you. So I was kind of high profile in the neighborhood where I was at and caused a lot of problems. So there was a lot of like fighting that was going on in the neighborhood. And so sometimes we kind of instigated it a little bit. I learned this trick when I was a kid, and it's a real fuck trick, and I don't mean to be offensive if somebody's offended by this or whatever, but there was this gay bar down the street, or a couple of miles from my house, and what some of these old asshole greasers guys used to do is they'd go and they'd get it like a prop. They'd get like a kid or something, and they'd sit him on the fence. And then when these gay guys came up and hit up the kid, they'd walk up and go, "What are you doing? That's my little brother. You better kick down some cash, fucker." And it was like that was their scam. And it worked well until they got their asses kicked. But so anyway, so I borrowed that scam, and I used it on these guys that hated punk rocks. And there was a boy that grew up in my neighborhood, and he was really small, and he used to get picked on a lot, and because he was really little, and but he started hanging out with us, so he kind of stopped getting picked on after a while. But this was a little baiting trick that we used. A young boy was in front of the liquor store, leaning against the wall in a dress. It was a nice imitation silk, deep navy blue, and almost sexual in the way the material clung to his hips. He was fucking the outfit up, wearing a pair of ratty old tennis shoes underneath, but if you didn't notice the footwear, he looked good. He'd been given a job. Each time a driver pulled into the parking spaces out front, he was to force visual contact as they entered the store. But after 15 or so visitors, he hadn't any luck. He was about to give up when they arrived. 4 boys in a Mustang looking to pick up a couple of sixers of ice-cold Bud. The dude sitting in shotgun laughed at the boy and then called him out to his friends. Finally, we might have a nibble. The fishing had been bad lately. We'd gone to this well too often, and it was getting harder to reel someone in. But these dudes weren't from here. I was worried that the old Chinese man who tended the liquor store was going to warn them, but he was too busy to notice. They purchased their beer and walked out, a laughing band of 4 young studs ready to get it on. They thought they ruled the night. It was going to be pounding brews and banging bitches for these boys. That is, after they teased the little punk faggot outside the liquor store. The boy was still standing against the wall. He was small for his age, and although a tough kid, he'd been picked on quite a lot due to his size. They made a crescent around him to block his exit in case he wanted to run, but he didn't. I couldn't hear anything. I had the tape deck on, and a dubbed copy of The Germs forming was ruining my cheap car speakers. But when I saw the driver of the Mustang shove the boy against the wall, I knew we had a bite. I got out of the wagon. I was followed by 3 demons. And